Okay, the vice chair is ready. So I'll call the meeting to order. If I could just get everybody ready. Order. Thank you. So we'll get started. So I'll start, of course, with the acknowledgement. Il est important de souligner que la ville d'Ottawa se trouve sur le territoire non cédé.
The city of Ottawa is on the unceded territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin population. Their presence are here.
Translation is available for this meeting. We have, I believe all our members are present with the exception of Councillor Kavanagh, who sent her regrets. And with that, Eric, if you could call the roll, please.
Councillor Tierney. Councillor Gower.
Here.
Councillor Leeper.
Good morning.
Vice Chair, Councillor Kavanagh. Vice Chair Curry.
Here.
Chair DeRush.
Here.
You have quorum, Chair.
Thank you, Eric. Item 1, notices and meeting information for meeting participants in the public. Nothing. Item 2, declarations of interest.
No.
Seeing none. Confirmation of minutes, long range LRT subcommittee minutes 7 September 29, 2023. Is that carried? Carried. Only item today in our main event for today is from Transit Services Department, item 4.1, stage 2 Trillium line and Confederation line update. The presentation was circulated earlier, and I understand you'll take us through that presentation. I don't believe we have any delegations, have I?
One delegation.
Oh, okay. So we should proceed to delegations then.
Stock presentation.
Oh, okay. No, let's do what you're saying. So we'll start with the presentation, then we'll go to delegations. Always listen to Eric. Thank you. Madame? Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Bonjour à tous. Ça me fait plaisir d'être ici comme toujours.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to have been here today once more. Today, we will provide you with an update about the construction of stage 2. So you will see that this is not all new information. You've been already informed about some of the points. So the new things are what happened within the last 3 weeks. We proceeded with training of our train operators.
Today, we'll provide you information on the status of the construction for all 3 O-train extensions. Over the course of the past few meetings, we have provided you with information on the progress of the O-train extension project, as well as plans for launching lines 2 and 4. Significant progress is being made on the O-train extension project. Through the year, we have reached many key milestones. In the east, track construction is very advanced and overhead catenary system installation is underway. Once complete, residents in the east will see vehicle testing along their new alignment. Station construction is taking shape in the west. The cut and cover tunnels continue to progress with excavation nearing completion, roof and wall pours advancing and backfilling beginning in some areas. In the south, testing and commissioning is going well and finishing works, including regulatory approvals and training has begun. There are many important steps in the achievement of our stage 2 objectives. Today, I would especially like to highlight the importance of training and how critical it is to our success. We will provide more information about how seriously we're taking this training and how integral it is to everything we do. Once complete, the O-train extension project will transform the transit system connecting residents in the east, west, and south. We are committed to delivering a safe, efficient, and reliable rail system that meets the needs of our city. Vous connaissez très bien Michael Morgan. Il est le directeur de rail.
You know, Michael Morgan is the director of the construction. He will give you an overview of where we are at, and we will be able to answer your questions in a few minutes.
Just a sad bit of news to start with. It's with a heavy heart that I must inform you that Jamie Robinson, Communications Director for East-West Connectors, passed away earlier this month. Jamie was a seasoned professional, was uncompromising in his support for the Stage 2 project. The team first met Jamie when we visited Metrolinx a number of years ago, and we were delighted when he later chose to join the Stage 2 project as part of the East-West Connectors Consortium. Many staff and many city councillors would have worked very closely with Jamie over the past few years. Jamie had been battling an illness and sadly succumbed to it earlier this month. He'll be remembered for his professionalism as well as his upbeat, ever positive attitude. Jamie was also a father and a husband. He is survived by his wife, Gina, and their 4 children. Our thoughts were with his family at this time. We'll go on to
Mr. Morgan, thank you. And on behalf of, I'm sure I speak for all members, thank you for bringing this forward. And again, I speak on behalf of everyone here to extend our condolences and our thanks for his contributions to the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. If we go to the next slide, I'll start to take you through the east section. We're going to run quickly through the stations. So next slide. So Montreal Road Station, so very good progress here. The platform's been poured. You see some of the overhead protection canopy on top. You see really the big change that's going to come next year is you see there's a staging area between the station and the highway. So that staging area needs to be given back to the highway. So we need to reinstate proper shoulders and proper merge lanes. And so that work right now is planned for 2024. So we're hoping to give that space back to residents to use on their commutes and to buses to use on their commutes. So next station, next slide, next station, Jeanne d'Arc. So here on the actual Jeanne d'Arc structure, you see they've started the rehabilitation work of the structure to put in the multi-use pathways, to reassign the lanes there. The station itself is progressing very well. The communications buildings and the various buildings are in good shape. You see the other, I would say, detail that maybe is not obvious is the noise wall between the station platform and the highway has been installed. And so these stations where they're on the highway have a noise wall to protect people, customers on the platform from noise and obviously sleet and things coming off the highway, just to make the experience on the platform a little bit more comfortable. You go to the next slide. So just a look at Place d'Orleans. So coming along very well here. Again, we've given back the lane. There was earlier in the year, the high-speed lane we needed for staging area. We're slowly giving it back, and they are putting together a plan for when they're going to repave the entire highway from Trim to Blair. So that's part of the contract is to reinstate that, and that will give back the shoulder and make travel through this area a little bit safer. Right now, you see pretty good progress on the station. This does have an escalator which has been installed. They're working at speed at this location. Let's go to the next slide. So again, another shot here, Convent Glen Station, good progress. This is again another location where we had to use part of the high-speed lane to do work on the station. The platform's coming along nicely. This is the location. So on the road, they're not doing any more road work at this time, but they're using a couple of lanes just for staging to work on the construction of the station. Go to the next slide. So Trim Station at the end. So good progress here. You see the bus transfer building on the right-hand side. That's coming together nicely. The park and ride is in decent shape. Obviously, we're still using it primarily for construction. This station is set to get permanent power in the coming days. One of the big changes that we've done over the last, I would say 6 weeks in the east has been to install all the traction power substations. And so these were big units that came as a single piece that need to be shipped in from Edmonton. And so that required some escorts and things and police support to get the traction power substations delivered. But those are all installed now. And so we can start working to have Hydro Ottawa and Hydro One connect power to those traction power substations. Once that's done, then we'll connect it to the overhead catenary, and then we're off to the races with testing trains. At this point in the east, it looks like we're going to be into January, February, depending on the snow and winter and how much progress they make in installing the catenary system. They may actually choose to wait to early March to start that testing. But at this point, looking very good on the east. The stations, the last number I had, overall completion of the stations was roughly 76%. So doing very well in terms of progress on the stations. Let's go to the next slide. So this is, I just mentioned this, big focus, obviously Hydro Ottawa strike, they're all back to work, which is good news. Doing some work with Electrical Safety Authority to get final sign-offs on the connections. So right now, the big focus is about power systems, catenary systems, traction power substations. Go to the next slide. We'll talk about the vehicle impact. So there's no big changes. I would say we still have a lot of kind of interim overnight closures, temporary closures, that type of thing. The biggest impact in the east right now is still on Jeanne d'Arc to the lane closures to be able to rebuild that bridge. If we go to the next slide, just in terms of the timing, still looking at that January, February handover timeline to the city, and then based on that, trial running would be in winter, and then we would open in the spring, assuming everything stays as is today. If we go to the west, on the next slide, so the first shot. So I did skip over one station. I skipped over a few in this section just because not a lot of visual progress has been made in the last few weeks. Westboro Station, the contractor is trying to hand that over to their station subcontractor in the coming 6 or 7 weeks, and then you'll see kind of a big crew mobilized there. This is Kitchissippi Station, so this has been handed over to the station contractor. You see kind of the tall walls coming up there out of the ground. The tracks will run in the middle of that station. There is a traction power substation that will go on this location as well. So a lot of activity at Kitchissippi. Go to the next slide, show you a shot of New Orchard Station. And so this is actually, you see where the tunnel widens out to get to the station. You see some of the roof there, so they're starting to backfill and cover. And then a lot of the concrete work now is these fan niches or sump pumps or very specific concrete work that needs to do to accommodate specific structures in the tunnel. So that takes a little bit more effort. When we're just doing a straight tunnel section, we can do that. They're averaging about every 8 to 10 days. They can do a pour of 15 meters. They've got a few of those different pours going on at once, and so they are making good progress. But some of the slower areas are where they need to put in the jet fans for the tunnel ventilation system, put a sump pump for the elevators, that type of stuff. Requires a little bit more attention. If you go to the next slide, I'll just give you a quick overview of so cut and cover tunnel. If you recall from the last meeting, there was 2 areas that were really, I would say, not problematic, but they were kind of the long pole in the tent. One was, this is called our zone 12. So you see that intersection. So that is right over the West Nepean collector. And so it's a very sensitive area where we want to make sure we didn't do any damage to city infrastructure. So they're now done excavation of the tunnel through this area. There's a little bit more to do for a utility, but otherwise we're able to successfully excavate over the West Nepean collector. We started some of the concrete work and they're making good progress through this area. So you can kind of see in the distance, it's already covered up. They've backfilled on the tunnel that's off back towards the parkway. So they are starting to backfill in a number of areas. If you go to the next section, so this is the other end of again, the 2 areas are really where we cross into Byron Linear Park. So this is the other end of the tunnel alignment. Again, excavation is complete through this area. So recently we've gotten some questions about when all the rock breaking through this area is going to be finished. So it is now finished. And so we are onto full tunnel construction in this area. So the plan is to try as much as possible to get this closed up over the coming months. Right now, the enclosed tunnel structure is going to be 2.2 kilometers long, and we've completed 1.6 kilometers of it. So there's about 600 meters to go. They're making decent progress now. They probably pour between 30 and 45 meters of tunnel per week. So we're looking for wrapping up the tunnel pouring and construction early in the spring, and then they can get inside and start retrofitting with all of the cabling and fans and rail systems. So that's very good progress. If we go to the next slide, another shot of Lincoln Field Station. So again, the permanent or the current bus loop on the right, the permanent bus loop up on the left, the station through the middle. So very good progress here. This is probably one of the most advanced stations. It's on the west. It's probably over 90% complete. So they're making very good progress there. Next to Iris. So this is, again, the very complex site. You see the creek on the left that we've kind of redirected. You see on the far left, there's still the bus detour in place or a roadway for access. The bus loops around to get onto Iris. And so we're trying to figure out the timing of when to take this transitway section out because it is actually very close to the guideway. There may be a need to put these buses on detour earlier in the program than we had originally planned, just to give us access and to make sure that we can kind of reinstate that area without having any problems with the train system. So we jump over to Queensview Station. So Queensview Station, so the pedestrian bridge across over to the Baxter building on the other side. This is obviously again in the end state. This is a free flow pedestrian bridge, and so people can just use it to get across the highway if they need to. They don't actually need to use it to get to the transit system. But you see in the distance the upper left, the Pinegrass Bus Garage, and then the tunnel through Connaught kind of sneaks around that and comes through Queensview Station. So a lot of activity in this area. Queensview is coming along well. If you go to the next slide, give you a shot of, so this received a lot of questions about this recently. So this is, again, another complicated location. So this is going west from our last photo from Queensview. We're going towards the Pinecrest interchange. And what happens here is that the train actually goes down into a partial tunnel to get under a series of ramps. There's a very large sanitary line in this area that we had to build, and it's very deep in this area. So this is a very complicated area and a lot of questions about it. The last concrete pour was completed this week that was required to start the work to reinstate a single westbound off-ramp. So there's lots of questions about that off-ramp. And so we're trying to get that reinstated this year, at least a single lane that would then open up to give kind of residents in this area access back to get to back to their area and their homes. Still some risk with that. The weather the last few days has been phenomenal. And so that helps us a lot with these concrete pours. Some risk still, but we're tracking for late December to get that opened up to be able to kind of open up that off-ramp. So it'd be very good news for the community. Next slide shows a similar photo, just a bit of a closer up diagram of the work. And so you can't actually, it's difficult to make out here, but the guideway for the train is actually under this section right here. So it's going to be kind of a partially open tunnel to allow air to circulate through that area that allows us to avoid the need for tunnel ventilation system. So a lot of activity in this area. To go to the next one, just the other side, so Pinecrest Station. So Pinecrest Station is coming on nicely. So we have these two stations that are fairly close to each other. The left-hand side is where you see kind of it's a construction staging area right now. There'll be a very, call it a bus drop-off area, a very small bus loop at that location where buses will be able to come in, turn around, drop people off to get to the LRT. So this will be kind of a primary point for buses to get to the LRT in this neighborhood. If you go to the next station, Bayshore. So again, good progress here. This is, again, we closed the transitway down a couple of years ago to start construction through this area. The crux of this project is an underground tunnel that's required for emergency egress to meet building code. If you go to the next one, you'll see Moody Station. So Moody Station, so the big change from last week, you start to see some of this architectural steel going up on the platform. Again, this is a spot where this will be a very unique one where as long as we can time the trains correctly, when the bus drops you off, you'll be able to go straight from the bus directly across to the train. So there's no elevation change there to get off of the bus to go to the train. So you'll be able to walk straight through. So this is a very interesting location for that. The next slide, just in terms of talking about progress. So again, the focus is to finish the tunnel on the west to make sure we get that as advanced as possible. We want to be able to get in there, start doing rail work. And then OCS pole installation will start at the yard and kind of the far western section near Moody and the LMSF. In terms of the road impacts, very quickly. So again, a lot of kind of on and off road impacts. The current long-term closure is at Pinecrest, and obviously we're trying to get that one ramp opened up this year. Go to the next one. Again, a few different changes here. Not a lot of huge impacts through this area, but you're going to see, we're going to continue working on the roads. We're going to continue doing lane closures, nighttime closures in order to facilitate construction. And then the next one, if we're on the same page, one more, we'll go to the, just in terms of the schedule, still targeting kind of that end of 2026. There has been some movement recently with the schedule. The Ambleside detour allowed us to put some resilience back into the schedule. So this is still holding, but obviously we're trying to see if there's opportunities to bring that back. So that's the west. So now I'll give you a rundown on Trillium Line. So Trillium Line, I've included photos for all of the stations just so that you get a good sense of where we are. Some of these haven't changed too much since the last month, but it is give you a good sense of the progress that's being made. So Bayview Station, again, on the left-hand side of the photo, they have been doing a lot of work on the finishing and the access. And so the concrete pads and the access have been paved. Everything that you see kind of in the foreground of this photo, that's all really construction staging. And so that will all be cleaned up and taken out of there. There's no huge impacts there. They are trying to get the pedestrian bridge closed in before winter, just so that they can continue working on lights and things over the winter. Next at Corso Italia. The big change here, you see in the distance there, obviously, exciting news for the community with OCH and their project breaking ground, a lot of activity. You see them tightening up here with the landscaping around the station. The left-hand side of the station has an emergency pathway to get to the emergency exit, but still not I would say a lot of change other than the landscaping at this location. Go to Dow's Lake. I saw a photo from yesterday. The trees are being planted, which is very exciting. The multi-use pathway should be, you see there in this photo, it's paved and it's kind of reinstated. And so it should be opening up again in the coming weeks to give residents back access to that mutt, because I know it's very popular. And the station's in good shape. They're still trying to catch up a little bit from the Hydro Ottawa outage, but it does have permanent power at this location. So they're in good shape there. Carling Station. So a lot of focus on the landscaping and the adjacent reinstating the adjacent parking lot where we used to have a construction staging area. So that's cleaning this up nicely. We should hopefully see some trees in before the year is out. Need to get the public art reinstated at this location. It's been a long time, but there was that big circular red structure, which is very nice. I forget the name of it now. So yeah, locomotion. Need to get that back and then put that into service. Next one, so Rita River pedestrian bridge. There are obviously lots of questions about this as well. So you see on the southern side, the paving of multi-use pathways is largely complete. So we can probably get there's some community groups that wanted to get in there and take some measurements about the snow clearing equipment or snow trail grooming equipment. The plans to put a trail on that one side. And then obviously the northern side still need to get in the paving. Electrical is outstanding and handrails on the bridge are outstanding. And so we're supposed to get the handrails delivered next week and then installed and then pave electrical, and then we should be able to open it up. So I know I get lots of questions on a regular basis about this bridge, and we are tracking it very closely. Mooney's Bay Station in good shape. So just still doing some finishing works there. Need to wrap that up. If you go to the next one, Walkley Station, in decent shape. You see there used to be a large construction staging location between the the roadway as well as the right of way. That's all been removed. They've been putting in the landscaping and reinstating that. So this station is in good shape. It's got fair gates. It's got all the systems just about connected. Greenboro Station's in the same. They've reinstated the construction staging area. It's in decent shape. They're out there testing every day. You go to South Keys, this was again one of the stations that was a little bit further behind because of the Hydro Ottawa outage strike, and so now they have permanent power here and they're trying to finish that one off quickly. The public art is installed at this location, and early feedback is that it's going to be a very interesting piece for residents using the station. Further down at Leitrim Station. So Leitrim, the station itself is in very good shape. We're trying to get the bus loop wrapped up before winter, as well as pieces of the park and ride. You see the concrete pads there for the bus drop-off areas is largely in place. We're trying to get paving organized. The bus operator building just to the left is in good shape. So this location is doing pretty well. If you kind of a bird's eye view on the next slide gives you a sense of how much progress has been made. So the bus loop, again, very good shape. And then in the foreground, that's where all the future parking spots are going to be. And so still aiming to get as much done as possible. You start to see the parking facility come out of the ground there a little bit with all the curbs in place. Similar constraint at Bowesville, still trying to work on the next slide, still trying to work on paving and getting the park and ride done. So, but again, you see all the curbs there, the base granular is basically done. So the next big step is the paving activity. You see the intersection in the distance. And so that was a very awkward intersection. So that's been straightened out. So that's you see the kind of the traffic signals there, and there should be some lights and things. So a much better intersection for the community at that location. Next shot shows just a close-up of that intersection. So what used to be a very awkward location has now been straightened out, which is good news. And then if you go to Limebank Station on the next one, again, so you kind of see the pattern here where they're getting all the curbing in, they're getting all the concrete work done for the bus drop-offs, and it's really getting that paving done before end of the year. Upland Station is the next one. So again, a big staging area kind of in the foreground. So that's starting to be reinstated. The station's pretty much wrapped up now. Obviously, we're still, for all of these stations, we're still waiting on occupancy, sign off by fire services to be able to get the public into those buildings. And then the last one, airport station. So no real change here. We are planning a full-scale exercise involving City of Ottawa's emergency responders, the airport authority, and others next week at this around about this location. So that will be a kind of one of the final good test of the training activity for those staff. In terms of mobility, on the next slide. So still the MUPs, trying to get that one MUP opened up shortly here, but otherwise Hunt Club, we're still taking up a lane. We have asked them to give us a timeline for demobilizing and fixing the road in that area. We'll come back and repave Hunt Club as a city next year. That section has been pretty damaged. And then the next slide, just the three main intersections in around the south. We are working as hard as possible to get all these done and make sure that they're in place before we open the system. And then so in terms of the schedule, this is what we kind of spoke about last time. Still some uncertainty around building occupancy schedule, the training schedule, the final testing commissioning, but this is kind of roughly what we're targeting for next year. So obviously some risk there, but we're trying to manage that. So just in terms of the Trillium line, I guess the other kind of big stream that's happening is the regulatory approvals and the direct relationship with Transport Canada. And so because it is a federally regulated railroad, it's all third-party approvals for a lot of the things we need to do. So if you go to the next slide, we've had a team that's been working with Transport Canada since about 2017. So that's a series of inspectors come out to kick the tires on the train and see the new train when it was delivered. If you go to the next slide, just kind of a sense of what we've been doing. We basically have had dedicated project managers looking at this since 2017 because there are a couple of federal agencies that are involved in the project. The Canadian Transportation Agency, which gives us approval to start construction. We also require a certificate of fitness from them to operate the line. And then Transport Canada, which is looking after rail safety and the approval of all the regulatory documents. And so I'll take you through a little bit of those submissions now. So if we go to the Canadian Transportation Agency, these are kind of the four main buckets that we've worked through with them. So there's an environmental effects evaluation. There's an approval to construct a railway line, which comes with a series of public notifications. You have to notify every single resident who lives adjacent to the line in order to get this approval. So there's a series of things that we did. We did most of those in 2017, 2018. Because this railway has been around since the 50s, 60s, you wouldn't believe it, but there are a series of board orders going back to the 60s that we had to get rescinded. So there's a bit of a cleanup effort there. And then finally, a certificate of fitness that essentially authorizes us to be in service and ensures that we have the appropriate insurance in place to manage and operate the line. If we talk about, so go to the next slide. So submissions to Transport Canada, certificate of fitness, notice of change of operations, that leads to a railway operating certificate. That's the 10,000 foot level in terms of what we need to do. So we need a CTA sign off, we need a Transport Canada sign off. If you go to the next slide, you'll see this is the series of documents that we need to be approved by Transport Canada. So these all required individual submissions, notice of railway works, an updated bridge safety management plan, an updated culvert safety management plan, an updated employee qualification standards regulations. So, I mean, I won't read the whole list. You have the list there, but a couple of highlights. One is the homologation package for the Stadler Flirt. And so that means that, there's a process where we validate that the Stadler is built to North American standards, APTA standards, or an equivalent. And so there's a whole process. There's a series of tests that Transport Canada wants to see to make sure that it's safe. There's a series of CTA technical requirements that we need to be compliant with as well. So there's a whole package. So we did that in 2015 for the Alstom Linz, and now we're doing it in 2023 for the Stadler Flirts. So that's probably, of that package, that's the list, that's probably one of the bigger ones. The other big change is, the updated operating rules. And so Confederation Line has its own set of operating rules. Historically, on the Trillium line, we used the Canadian Railway operating rules. Now we've kind of working with Transport Canada, we've shifted away from that. We've set up a custom set of rules for the Trillium line, which are based pretty closely on the freight rules, but are accustomed to a transit operation. You know, we need to acknowledge and recognize that we're running it differently, managing it differently. And so we've set up a set of different rules. So there's a whole bunch of things going on there with regulatory effects. Just in terms of training, quickly, so we'll go to the next one. La ligne 2 et la ligne 4 de haut train sont
Line 3 and line 4.
I had the wrong side of the page. Formation du personnel qui ferait fonctionner le réseau constitue une étape critique pour mener bien le projet.
We need a training. We will have a training that is integrated. It will be given with OC Transpo. It will be done throughout the construction. We have a very detailed curriculum. It's working with OC Transpo. We have light train operators and controllers trained. They have to be ready when we will start operating.
That we're doing now as part of line 2 and 4 is we're controlling the network. Previously, we used to outsource that function. We outsourced it to a third party that was managing the network out of Dorval. We took the decision a few years ago to bring the controller training, the controller function in-house so that we can have, similar to how we operate the Confederation line, the controllers have access to all the cameras, they have access to all the security systems, all the SCADA systems on the train network, but equally, they're in the same room as our special constables unit. They're in the same room as our bus operations, they're in the same room as our paratransport dispatchers. So if there's any assistance or any need for anything on the transit network, they're right there. Previously, it was like a difficult phone call, you know, this awkward coordination to Dorval. Now they're all in the room together. So there's a huge upside from a safety, from a service point of view, having them in the room. But equally, there's now a new kind of training obligation. We need to make sure you've got controllers who understand how to dispatch the trains on a federally regulated network, as well as manage all of the control systems. And so that's a big change from the past. Equally, we used to only have 4 trains in service. And so now we're going to have 9 trains in service. So again, a big change, big emphasis on making sure that we're training people correctly, that we're giving them all the tools they need to run the system safely. You know, again, we have a fantastic set of trains. We have a fantastic set of new systems that are coming with it in terms of like the new train control system to make sure we have all the safety controls in place. But it does create a huge new pressure on the training group as a whole. So just go to the next slide, give you a sense of the training time for each of those groups. So for rail operator instructors, so 120 hours for trying to train 9 instructors. So it's 120 hours on the tracks on a completed system with, you know, so in addition to that, they will have spent time in the classroom doing rules training, theoretical training on the train. They will have been spent time on the train simulator. So once that is complete, then they get on the track 120 hours. And so there's 9 of them. The same with the diesel rail operators, series of training programs in classroom on the rules, on how the system operates before they get onto the train. And then it's a progressive training, train in the yard, sort of train on a train that's not moving, train on one that's moving in the yard at slow speed, higher speed on the main line, and then in the final configuration of the system. Now, unfortunately, we're still not in the final configuration of the system. We've gotten to the point where we've been able to run 8 trains on the network at once. We need to get to that 9th train. Once we're at that 9th train, then you can really say that the system is finished and they can start accumulating all the hours they need. So 120 hours, 54 operators. And so you can do the math. We can train a number at a time, but it will take some time to do that. At this point, we have just over 1,300 hours completed. We need just over 6,000 hours to get the entire pool complete. So we're around the 20% mark. Once we finish the testing and we can allocate more track time and more vehicles to the instructors and the operators, then they can really start accumulating hours very quickly. You know, 120 hours, it's basically 3 weeks of training on the tracks, regular shifts. And so, you know, if we're able to run full shifts, entire days, then you start to accumulate those hours very quickly. Same with the controllers. You know, they need a lot of hours. You see it's double there. 120 for an operator, 240 for a controller. That's because we want the controller is the one who, you know, when there's a train fault, when it stops, they're the one in the room talking to bus operations, talking to special constables, calling emergency responders if there needs to be something done. And so, you know, twice the amount of training for that group because they absolutely need to be qualified and understand how to manage the system and how to get the help if they need it. And then if you go to the next slide, not to leave anybody off the list, there is a program for emergency responders, and they're always very excited to understand the different tools and techniques we have for recovering trains, and there's different things about the train, different ways to access it if it were involved in an incident, different ways to lift the train, different security measures on the train in terms of how the doors function, how the roof hatches work. So a lot of things for emergency responders to learn there. And so we've been doing a series of hands-on exercises with them, culminating in this full-scale exercise next week. So that's the update on training, and we're happy to take any questions on that. In terms of,
Maybe before to move forward to the next item, to the questions first, sorry. Je veux revenir encore sur l'entraînement. Pourquoi
I would like to come back to the training. It's very, very important. First of all, I think Michael really explained the situation with Trillium line. We are under the purview of Transport Canada. We have to have the 9 trains in circulation, and they have to be functioning in real conditions in order to train our own employees. So this is an extra requirement. And because we haven't finished testing the system, it's very difficult to train them. It's a question of safety for our employees. And it's a kind of a version, is it the egg or the chicken? We don't know. Because if it's not safe, we cannot train them. But if we cannot train them, we cannot go to the next step. So you have to understand this cycle. Our staff are working. They are very strict about security, and I do agree with them. So we have to present you this information today. It's an opportunity. But once more, it's a very delicate situation in terms of training, but you have to understand this is for the safety of our employees, the safety of our end user at one point, and we want to make sure that when the service will be launched, our controllers and operators will be used into the system. It's very different from the Confederation line. It's not in a straight line. With the Trillium line, we have to share a tract. There's going to be a lot of switches. We have to make sure that even if the operator received a green light from the control room, it's the operator that decides what he has to do. So this person becomes more and more important. Even though all the good work done by the controllers and the people in the control room, it's the operator that will make sure that the switch is okay, that there's not a train coming in sight, coming in front. So you have to understand how complex the situation is. We have to really train them well. And of course, we want them to keep their eyes open when they work, but we want them to be very at ease. Once more, it's very complex. We're insisting on training. We had a meeting not too long ago, but today we wanted to highlight the fact. Training, for me, is the core of everything we're doing. Of course, this control room is there, but the operator is the brain of the operation. He's the person responsible for everything.
And then just to wrap up, so just an update on the comms team did an excellent job of rolling out a new website. So I encourage you to go visit that. And then the usual ways, I think we've shared this last slide a number of times on how to get in touch with us if you have any questions. So with that, we're happy to take questions about the report and the presentation.
Excellent. Merci. And merci, René. Thank you, Michael. I understand, Eric, that we do have a delegation. Adam Elliott, are you online?
Chair, if the speaker could please accept the prompt to be promoted to panelist, he'll be joining shortly.
Hi, Adam. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can, Adam. Before I turn it over to you, it's the chair speaking. So I just have in the notes here that you want to talk about transit-oriented density. I don't know what your presentation is. I don't know what your comments are. Normally under our rules of procedure for delegations is that you confine your remarks to the item that is before us. So we're getting a construction update, and I'm sure we'll get questions from members on the status of the project and various pieces of that, and as well as the impacts of the construction, such as traffic and that kind of thing. Normally, chairs show a lot of latitude, and I'm willing to do that. We don't get a lot of delegations here, but I'd ask you to confine your comments to what we just heard. And if you want to talk about something else, the clerk's office can, talk to you after about where it's best directed. Okay, Adam.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I just turn on my video so you can see me if I'm going to see you guys.
Okay, Adam.
Hi.
Go ahead.
So yeah, I appreciate the introduction and just the rundown there. First of all, hello, bonjour, and good morning, everyone. Thank you just very much for the opportunity to speak here today. In reference to your comments of focusing specifically on the construction, I guess my question and just my maybe concern I have is just as I watch the LRT stations, especially in the West End, because I'm a West End Ottawa kid, born and raised. As I watch the stations kind of construction to the west, I am concerned just about the lack of density around those stations and just the lack of construction and development that I would have hoped would have been in progress now. Like when I look at the Moody stations of the world, with lots of open space around it, and just a lot of the stations, even in the photos of that presentation, there's a lot of low density single family homes, and truly, I think I'm the perfect candidate. I'm a real public transit kind of nerd, despite my background growing up in CARP, and I just am, I guess, a little disappointed, or just wondering when, as a resident in the West End, when we can see more kind of that urban intensification and density start to build in around those stations that we see the great construction on, and it's really honestly quite exciting to see. So I'll cut it there. I don't want to waste everyone's time, but that was my overall question and concern, and thank you all very much for the time.
Okay, that's fair, and I appreciate your feedback, as does I'm sure all the committee members. I know that as a city council, we're working very hard under the leadership of Councillor Leeper and the mayor to move forward on an official plan, which involves approving a density around our stations. I share your view. When you see some of the pictures, you know that several years down the road, potentially, it's not going to look like that. We're going to see development, and you've got the Walkley station I was looking at there. You've got some developments that's gone in prior to that, because we had a station in my own ward. We have the Line Bank station, and the development community's really been waiting for the line to be operational there. You saw in the Chapman Mills area, Barhaven, where we canceled the train and we had this empty corridor and build up around it. It just is not the way of, probably not the best way to sequence it. So I do think you will see some considerable development in a lot of these areas over time, and that's why we're doing this project. So again, thanks for participating today, and tune in to some of the other committees where I'm pretty sure you'll see some of the items that you're talking about today. Okay, any questions for this delegation just on the substance of today's presentation? Seeing none, thanks again, Adam. Turn to committee members first for questions to staff. Councillor Leeper.
Thanks. Just one question this month, which is I noticed one of the regulatory approvals is for the hot bearing detection. How are we proposing to do hot bearing detection on line 2? And are there technologies that we can transfer over to line 1, 3, and 4, or whatever the numbers are?
Mr. Chair, the axle and the bearing setup on the line 2 trains is completely different than on the Confederation line. So there is, some additional, I would say, opportunity to measure the temperature of the bearings using a wayside monitoring solution. Now, that being said, we have already had one vendor who said they couldn't do it, who came to site and declined to submit a solution because it's still difficult. It's not an easy thing.
Sorry, on the Stadler trains or on the
Stadler? Yeah, so we've had one vendor in terms of a wayside solution decline to participate in the procurement because they didn't think it would be possible. So we do have a vendor on board now who believes they have a solution that will work, subject to testing. It is a complex piece of technology to get right. And so we're looking at putting that in place next summer. There'll be some interim mitigations before then, but we are working to put something in place. If there's anything to be gleaned or learned from that, we'll certainly, apply that if we can to the Confed line. But at this point, we're we still have some hurdles to overcome just finding a solution that works for the Trillium line.
Can you describe more in depth the solution that you'll be testing?
It'll be like a wayside laser-based solution that has a series of scanners that try to scan a specific location of the axle as the train passes over that location. So it needs to do it at speed. The scanners need to be able to kind of detect a quite narrow zone on the axle to see if there's an issue with the journal bearings. And so then the vehicles will be equipped with a RFID tag. So as it passes over that location, if you get an alarm, you'll know which vehicle caused the alarm, and that information will be fed back to the control center. So there should be early detection of overheated journal bearing.
So the detection or the ascertaining how hot the bearings are is going to be done not remotely from the wayside using something like a laser as opposed to the old hot box technologies.
I mean, that's the one and the same. Hot box is a very kind of loose language for describing that function, but essentially we're using a wayside device to try to detect heat and or noise on the vehicle. So but it's essentially the same function, but it's going to be a very specific solution for this vehicle. This axle configuration may not be possible to apply it to any other situation.
Okay, is this a timeline risk? Pardon, madam.
Sorry for that. I just want to maybe to share with you that we have worked with RTG on the Confederation line to have a detector. And we have received a letter from them saying that this technology is not possible to be applied on the Confederation line. So that's why we are working now on the smart bugs. And next month we should work with NRC to see if it's feasible, if we can have this signature that we're looking for. So that will replace the technology of heat detector if that works.
For line one, that's the signature associated with a vibration that would be indicative of
Correct.
Of an
Yes.
issue.
So if we have a loose on the bearing, that should bring a kind of vibration, and the smart bug should be able to detect it.
Wow.
However, because our threshold is so low, which is perfect, because we don't want to take any risk, we never reached that threshold. So now we're working in our closed area with NRC to be able to have this threshold so we can apply those smart bugs on the Confederation line.
But for the Trillium line, we're looking at wayside detection. And we haven't chosen, or we've chosen a vendor, but we're only going to test with them. We haven't actually determined that the product works and that we're going to purchase it. Is that a risk for our timelines?
In terms of timelines, I think we're okay. We're working with Transport Canada on some mitigations. There's other things that you could do potentially, like heat strips and inspections on an interim basis while we commission and put the wayside detector into place. We've never had a wayside detector on the Trillium line. We ran the system for 20 years, and so we're kind of forging new territory here. So far, Transport Canada has been okay that we would be able to enter service without having the solution in place, so long as we have other mitigations that we consider to be appropriate.
Okay, and they would allow us to move into revenue service,
Take passengers, yeah.
The mitigations with which we could run in the meantime, if the solution is not ready for prime time by the time we enter revenue service, would they affect train performance, the passenger experience?
No.
Okay. In terms of timelines,
Mr. Chair, no.
No slow orders or anything like that?
No.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just continue with the members. Councillor Craig.
Thank you very much for that. Through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Morgan, you listed so many different regulations, what Transport Canada has to say, and you talked about some of the energy requirements for the LRT, a lot of different things that have to be regulated in place, rules to follow. So when the delegation asked about transit-oriented development and how much, it doesn't look like there's a lot of real housing apartment buildings around our stations that, maybe that will come. But would there be things that would prevent that from happening? Because you think about, we talked about it at another committee recently, sanitary sewers, stormwater, and then all the things that you list. Would there be things when Councillor Leeper goes to planning committee, to planning committee the zoning review that Councillor DeRoche talked about? Will there be a list of things to say why we can't have certain developments in front of transit stations and areas?
So, Mr. Chair, currently there is a set of proximity guidelines that are used to dictate what you can do in and around basically any light rail system. Currently, it's only for Confed Line Stage 1. We are looking at updating that proximity guideline through the planning committee in the coming months to include all of Stage 2, Stage 3. That provides some guidance in terms of how you build in and around a station. Obviously, utility impacts, other conflicts, other different things get in the way. The biggest challenge, I think, is building over the light rail system, but we've been very successful in building adjacent to the light rail system. The example given, Walkley Station is a very good example. If you go along Richmond Road, there's towers that have gone up since we started construction. Obviously, the big approval of a set of towers over by Lincoln Field Station. There's absolutely density coming to these locations. So I don't think there should be a concern there. Moody is its own kind of interesting location because it's a transfer location for the Canada buses. And so it's more of a transfer as opposed to a densification. But certainly by Bayshore, you can go all along the line and you can track the development applications in for buildings near, adjacent to, connected to the train. And there are lots.
Mr. Chair, I will just make my obnoxious comment that, Canada's already built 9 buildings and 3 hotels before the Terry Fox station. We just don't have the station, but we're all set.
I'm sure we take note of that. Speaking of the Walkley station, Councillor Brockington.
Thanks, Chair. Beautiful River Ward. Very happy with the Trillium line and the progress, and we can't wait for it to open. So I have a number of questions relating to the Trillium line, if I may. Mr. Morgan made reference to the fact that abutting Place d'Orleans station, the road is going to be repaved because I guess it's been chewed up from all the construction, and that's understandable. And he'll know that I've been raising the quality of Hunt Club Road with him under the Trillium line bridge and the Airport Parkway bridge, which, because of bridge work that's been happening, the road surface is in very poor condition. Can Mr. Morgan confirm whether patchwork in this immediate area has been complete as of now?
Mr. Chair, we've been working with the contractor to ensure that they do patchwork as much as possible before the winter, and trying to actually get them to demobilize from the area because they are still taking up some space on Hunt Club Road. So we're working with them to confirm that they will make sure when they leave the area that it's in decent shape. There is a program to come back next year, a city program to continue the paving and resurface that area. So we still pushing the contractor on work in that area. There continues, I think, still to be the odd complaint that comes in about the quality of the road under that bridge.
Yeah, it's certainly more than the odd complaint, but would the city intervene and do the work if the contractor doesn't do it this calendar year?
If there's, Mr. Chair, if there's patching or if there's other safety concerns, we could absolutely intervene and do that work.
Okay, thank you. Clifford Allen Park is a park that abuts the Walkley maintenance yard that's been built. It's at the end of Albion Road in River Ward, where Albion on the north side of the maintenance shed. This park exists. It's been used for staging, storage. A parking lot was built in green space. Community is obviously very looking forward to getting their park back. When does that work? When will that work be complete, where we decommission the park and the public gets to use it again?
I think the staging space next to Walkley Yard is likely to be reinstated next year in the summer season once they fully demobilize from the site.
Okay, and that includes removing everything that was put in there, the crushed gravel. I don't know if there's asphalt in there, but everything that was put in there for staging comes out.
Mr. Chair, there's a series of Jersey barriers. There's, as you say, it's been used as a parking lot, so crushed gravel. There's some equipment that's staged there. There's temporary fencing. All of that thing, all of those elements should be removed and it should be reinstated to its condition the condition that it was in prior to them using that facility.
Excellent. Okay, very good. The Rideau River Bridge, thank you for providing that in your presentation. The only thing I did not hear was the date of opening that we're working with. To say that Councillor Menard and I are keen to see this open is an understatement. What date do you foresee this opening?
Mr. Chair, we are due to receive the handrails for the bridge in the coming week, and then it should be installed a week or so after that. We still have some paving on the north side to do and some electrical work to get the lighting connected. We're still forecasting the coming weeks, but we can't be more precise than that.
Okay. Once the Trillium line opens, are there going to be opportunities for station grand reopenings with the community where we invite the local community to come, Mooney's Bay Station, Walkley Station, other stations along the line to see their new station, to immerse themselves with the LRT line? What are the plans to reach out to the local councillors along the Trillium line for these types of events?
Mr. Chair, the part of the stage 2 communications launch includes events that are being held regionally for councillors. So we'll have more information as those dates get closer, but there will be individual mail outs for individual communities as well as site visits.
So you said there are regional events, is that what I heard?
Sorry, I just meant area in specific events in wards that are impacted by the opening of stage 2.
So if local councillors would like to ensure that there's some sort of event at their local station, should they be reaching out to the stage 2 team now just to say, hey, I think it would be great to have an event at station X. How can we work together to make this happen?
Absolutely.
Okay, fair enough. The Walkley MUP, the MUP that connects Walkley Road to the station and then heads south through the residential towers. Did I see something recently that this MUP has to be closed again, or is that not the case?
Mr. Chair, I think there's probably some residual work related to drainage and connections in that area. So there's been some challenges. I think the recent large storm surfaced some potential issues that need remediation between this original kind of sites that were there, between the new construction, between the condo. So I think there's potentially a closure required, but I can follow up with you offline on that.
Fair enough. I have a rare Friday night meeting with the community tonight, and I know this is going to come up. And just finally, the tentative date of opening the Trillium line has bounced around a little bit. Can you confirm that the spring of 2024 is still the target at this time?
Yes, Mr. Chair, spring 2024, but I won't give any month.
Fair enough. And we went from autumn to spring, which is basically half a year. We were projecting an opening of the autumn of 2023, pretty close to the autumn of 2023. We didn't make that announcement to the spring of 2024 until very, very recently, despite being aware of all of the outstanding tasks that remained up to that point. Is there simply that much work that remains, or is it preferable to open a line in the spring as opposed to in the winter?
Mr. Chair, we're not ready to open it for sure. It's not because of the season. It's definitely now we are trying to commission the vehicles. Mm-hmm. And it's a tough run. And as I said previously, it's very, very important to make sure that everything's okay before to move forward to the training, etc. So we still have a lot of job to do. And on last, I think it was the last committee meeting, we brought a lot of details to explain why we believe that it's a good thing to postpone the opening of this line on next spring. We can walk you through. I know that you couldn't be there, but we can have a session separately with you if you would like to, and you will understand why we won't be able to open it this year.
Sure, I appreciate that. As someone who has taken the Trillium line since the first day it opened, when I used to work at Tunney's Pasture, I can say that I and those who used to ride the line and those that we are now going to attract to take this line are very keen to see this open. So we look forward to the spring of 2024 when all of council can come out and celebrate the grand reopening of this line. Thank you.
Any other questions from members or councillors? Don't see any. I've got a couple questions. So obviously we're moving into the winter months. And that poses some, I guess, some conditional, some conditions that affect the pace of construction. I'm wondering if you just sort of comment on that in terms of what the season does for construction.
So, Mr. Chair, the impacts of winter, I think if you look at Confederation West, they're still doing a lot of concrete work. And so a day like today is a perfect day to be pouring concrete. You don't have to heat, you don't have to cool. Hot days in the summer are bad for pouring concrete, cold days in the winter are bad. And so they have been, I would say, the contractor did hit a certain stride and pace with the concrete pouring, getting that 30 to 45 meters per week of tunnel construction. We do expect that to see a slowdown of that slightly over the winter when they go to do the pour. Now they have to tarp it, they have to heat it, they have to do a bunch of additional things, and so that will slow down over the winter season. So that's probably going to be the biggest impact on the west, on the east, and on the north-south, because they're now into certainly on the east with the overhead catenary, that would be difficult to do in the winter, and so their production would be down there. On the north-south, a lot of the work that they're doing now on the stations is about commissioning communication systems, indoor kind of work, working in the communication rooms, and so they're in decent shape there. In terms of testing the trains and finalizing any running of the trains, they now need to clear the tracks and do that maintenance work, and so which is good experience for them to gain. So it's not, I wouldn't say there's a downside to that. Having them prove out their snow clearing capabilities over January, February will be very good for the system. But in terms of progress of the work, it's really down to running the trains, and so to the extent that they can keep the tracks clear, that there should be no impact on that particular aspect of the work.
Okay. And I suspect that the oversight that we provide of the contractor is that if there are things that shouldn't be done because of extreme temperatures or environmental conditions, that it wouldn't be done. Like you said, there's some things that are just standard practices. You can't do it in the wintertime, but there's other elements of the project that if it's not the right time to do it, that we factor that in.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, there are, things like concrete can be done in winter. It's harder to do it in winter. There are things like pulling fiber optic cables that cannot be done in winter. So there are just certain activities that we will stop. Pulling cables is one of them because the cables will break if we try to pull them in cold temperatures. So to the extent that there's any remaining cable pulling and that type of work on the east, there will be a pause on that activity. They will not be able to continue that. And so that's certainly something our construction team would flag.
Okay, thank you. Just moving on slide 52, you'd outlined all the kind of regulatory pieces of this. Many, if not most, are under federal jurisdiction. And maybe this isn't the time to discuss, but what would be the difference if this was a GO Train project and this project? Would it have the same number of boxes that we see on slide 52, or would it be less?
Mr. Chair, I'd have to look into that to see for sure, because I know GO Train does run under some provincial jurisdiction, but oftentimes what they'll do for that type of service using heavy rail, running on heavy rail networks, they will mirror the federal regulations. And so I suspect that many of those same processes took place, but we're doing them all at once from scratch for a new system, which is very different than if you were to do incremental expansions of a network. It would be much easier to gain those approvals.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it is what it is, and your focus is on completing this project in a responsible way. But maybe the day will come when we look at what are potentially some disadvantages of being under federal jurisdiction. And again, I don't think passengers would hesitate to get on the GO Train versus getting on the O Train. So that's perhaps a conversation for another day. But obviously, slide 52 shows there's a lot of approvals at the regulatory level, that we're hoping that there'll be some swift and sound decisions there so that the project can move forward. Lastly, just on the public, the last slide, I continue to get questions from the public. I'm sure councillors do. I think we're doing a very good job to show the progress of the project and to connect with the community. So I'll just use this opportunity to urge people to plug into the various plug points that we have to follow the project as it goes forward and get some of the very detailed information that we're sending out to the public. I think we're definitely bending over backwards to get the word out in terms of how things are going and what to expect as we move forward into this, especially the Trillium line leading up to the springtime. So thank you for that. I don't have any other people on the list for questions. So the report recommendation is that the Light Rail Subcommittee receive this report for information. Is that received? Received. Item 5, there's no in-camera items. Item 6, I'm not aware of any notice of motions. Item 7, I'm not aware of any inquiry. Item 8, I'm not aware of any other business. Before we move to adjournment, we have tentatively set a meeting for December of 2023. We won't be meeting in November. Obviously, that's a very charged month with the budget, with some other key projects like Lansdowne that are on the docket. So we won't be meeting in November, and I will discuss with members and Madame Amilcar whether there's sufficient content for a meeting in December. But obviously, once we get into the testing, once we get into that really critical milestone, we will commit to having a meeting so that we can spend some time in that, because I know there's considerable interest there. So we'll say December 11 as a tentative, but we'll assess as things progress, and it might make sense to come back in January if the agenda is not of any great depth. So with that, we're adjourned. Thank you so much to everyone. Merci Michael, merci René et toute l'équipe, merci Eric.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you to the whole team. Thank you.